In section 4 of chapter 6, we're going to take a look at another special form of the linear equation in the two variables. It's called the point-slope form. And this is the equation here. That's the point-slope form. So we're going to find equations of a given line given 2 points. Recognize how to find lines that are parallel and perpendicular, and then graph a line given its slope in 1 point, and then recognizing the point-slope form. Now, if you have 2 ordered pairs, we can find the slope using this formula that we used in the last section. Now, once we know the slope, which is m, in this point-slope form, and we know 1 point, y sub 1, and x sub 1, we can actually find the equation. So, let's work this out. So let's find the slope first. So negative 2 minus 2. There's our y sub 2 minus y sub 1. And this is m. Over our x sub 2. Now minus a minus 1. That'll give us a plus 1. So we end up then with the sum of this, which is going to be a negative 4, and this is going to be 5. So our slope is a negative 4/5. Now, in using this formula, we can choose either of these points. In fact, later they're going to show you using this point and this point, but we'll use this point for now. So the formula we're going to substitute in is y equals, let me see, do that one again here. Y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. Now there's 2 y's on this side, 2 x's on this side, with a negative sign between them, and then an m out in front of the parenthesis. So it shouldn't be too hard to memorize. So we're going to substitute this for our first y here. So y minus this 2 equals our slope now, which is a negative 4/5 times x minus, now notice our x value is a negative 1, and in the formula there's a negative. So the opposite of a negative 1 makes this a positive 1. So now we're going to solve for the letter y. And since this has a fraction, a good technique that we had earlier in the course is when you have a fraction, multiply every term by the lowest common denominator. So I'm going to multiply this term by 5, this term by 5. Now when I multiply this term by 5, and this is all one term, the 5's cancel out. So I rewrite it. 5y minus 10 now, and then the 5's are gone, so negative 4, and then negative 4 times a positive 1 is a negative 4. Now I want to transpose this negative 10 to the other side, so I get 5y equals a negative 4x. I'm going to take this value here to the other side where it becomes a positive 10, and a negative 4 gives me a positive 6. And now I'm going to divide everything by 5. Here the 5's cancel out, and I get y. I'll write it up over here. Y equals a negative 4/5 x plus 6/5. Now, sometimes they might ask that rather than being in slope-intercept, they'd want this equation in what we call standard form. So I'm going to erase this here, because when it's in this form here, it's easy to convert it to standard form. I'm going to take the negative 4x from this side, bring it over to this side as a positive 4x, plus the 5y stays there. And now I'm going to bring this over to this side as a positive 10, and a negative 4 gives me a 6. So now this is in standard form, and this is in slope-intercept form, and I found it by going from 2 points, finding the slope, then using the point-slope form, and substituting, and then solving for y, and then also getting standard form. All right, so let's see what the book does here as well. So first, find the slope, and we get a negative 4/5. And again, you can pause this if you want to see it done this way. Now, we have a choice. We could use the negative 1, 2, which is the one I chose, or you could use the 4 or negative 2. They're going to do both of them here, but first they're going to use this one. So we substitute, and we get this. Now, they're not getting rid of the fractions. I like the idea of getting rid of the fractions. And there is your slope-intercept form. And if you put that by multiplying each term by 5, you get standard form, which is what we had as well. Now what they're going to do is use the other pair, the 4 and the negative 2. Again, the slope's the same. Put in the 4 as your x value here. There's the 4. And then the negative 2 as your y value. But remember, the opposite of a negative 2 makes this now a positive 2. And we have that. But see, getting rid of those fractions make it a little easier to solve, and you end up with exactly the same slope-intercept form, and standard form is the same. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of work here on parallel and perpendicular lines. And I will illustrate that to you in saying that if lines are parallel, they will have the same slope, but different y-intercepts. And if lines are perpendicular, the way we do that is if we multiply the slopes together, the slope of the first times the slope of the second equation, that's going to equal a negative 1. So if the slope of one equation is 1/2, what would I have to multiply that by in order to get it to equal a negative 1? Well, it's the reciprocal of this, but the opposite sign of the reciprocal. Because we had said earlier, 1/2 times 2/1 is a positive 1. But to get a perpendicular line, it has to be its opposite sign reciprocal. So if this first term is positive, then the reciprocal has to be negative. So you end up with a -1. Okay. And then keep in mind that if you have a horizontal line, the line that's perpendicular to that is a vertical line. And we'll be going over some of that. Okay, find the equation of a line through this point, but it's parallel to this line. So for a line that's parallel, you have to find the slope of this equation. Now we find the slope of this equation by solving for y. So 3y, we're going to transpose the 5x to the other side, where it becomes a -5x plus 1, and we divide everything by 3 now. So our equation is y equals a -5/3 x plus 1/3. Well, all that we are interested in at this time is the slope. So we have found the slope of a line that would be parallel to this line. And we want it to go through this form. So we're going to use that point slope form, substitute these values, and I could work it out for you, but you've seen how we work it out already. So let's just see what it looks like here. So there's the equation in standard form. I'm going to solve for y, and I find then that my slope is a -5/3, indicated here. Now I'm going to put it in point slope form as I substitute the slope and the 1 point that we have. So we've substituted the 3 goes in there as a 3. Remember, the negative is in the formula. There's our -5/3, the slope, and we put our x value there, and because the negative is there, it looks like this. So I would have multiplied everything by 3. Good, that's what they're doing. See, they're getting rid of the 3's now as a fraction, multiplying through, and then they get it in standard form. Now, to solve what your new equation would be from standard form, we're going to solve for the y. So it's 3y equals, we take our 5x to the other side as a -5x, and then plus 19, and we divide everything by 3. So our new equation in slope-intercept form is y equals a -5/3 x. And remember, we said our slope was a -5/3, so there it's coming up. But we had to find what our new y-intercept was. And in this case, it's a plus 19/3. It'd be nice if it was just a nice whole number, but that's good too. Okay, let's finish this up and we'll see what they have. And then putting it into slope-intercept form, they get this. Now, if you were to graph them, you'll notice the lines are parallel. The y-intercepts are different, but the slopes are the same. So, to the left of the equation of the equal sign, these are the same, but you see a 1 here and a 19. That's not quite the y-intercept, but you see they are different. So there's the graph. Okay, now what we want to find is how about instead of the being a parallel line, we want a perpendicular line. So again, we know that the slope of this was originally, we brought that over as a -5/3. So bringing that over mentally and then dividing by 3, and negative 5/3 is the slope. So what would be the new slope of a line that's perpendicular? So when we multiply the slopes together, we end up with a -1. Well, we said it was the opposite sign, so it'll be plus, and then the reciprocal of this, 3/5. So this is going to be our new slope for our new equation going through these points. So we're going to use that point slope form, but our new slope will be 3/5. So let's just do that there. So our new slope is 3/5, because our original slope was a -5/3. This times this gives us a -1. So we put our new slope into the point slope form right there. We're using the x value of 2, the y value of 3. So these are the points they want us to use. And then we multiply each term by 5, get rid of the 5s, and then put it in standard form. Now again, if you want to pause it to write any of this down, now what would it be in slope-intercept? Well, you just solve for a positive y. And note that our slope here is 3/5. But we have a new b value there. Okay. And when we graph it, this is what it would look like. Notice the green line was this positive slope, and the blue line is the negative slope. So this is the first one we had, and then this is the line that is perpendicular. It forms a right angle there. Okay. Now, here they're asking us to graph a line with this slope, but that goes through this point. So the strategy of this would be, I'll try to make a nice graph here for you. Where is this point? Well, it's 2, 5, so 2, there's 1, 2, and it's going to go up 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we put a point right there. That's where 2, 5 is. And from this point, we have this slope. And remember, it's a -3/4, and this is rise, and this is run. And it's negative. So what we're going to do, and I'll do it in blue here to make it stand out a little bit here. So we're going to do our run first. So from this point, we're going to go over 1, 2, 3, 4, because it's negative slope. And now we're going to go up 3. 1, 2, 3. So there's our original point, and I'll use my line tool again. And there's the graph. So I'm not using the y-intercept here, but it's a similar process. I'm using the point they give me. Okay? Now I don't have the equation for this line. They're not asking that as of yet, anyway, but they just want what would the graph of this if it passes through this point. So you put that point, and then from that point, you do your graph. Your slope, which gives you the graph. Okay. And they're going to do this for us here as well. Okay, so alright, so you put in this point that we said right there. Now when we did it, we went this way and got this upper one up here, but you could have gone down 3 and then over 4 this way. And that's that. Okay, and again, they're formally introducing, again, because we've mentioned this is point slope. And finding the equation of a line using the point and slope. Okay. Now here, we substitute the value of the 2 and the 3, the x and the y, and the m being a negative 1/2, into the point slope form. And again, we've done this already, but this is writing an equation in the point slope form. So all we're doing is putting in the values, and I'll go back here so you can see it one more time, of what they're giving you, and then we're clearing parentheses here, and we get this. So you'll have some like this on your certification. Now if we solve this equation for y, which we've done a number of times now, we get the slope-intercept form. Or if we want to put it in standard form, we get it this way. So depending upon what they ask, point slope form, standard form, slope-intercept form. Hopefully you can do that. Now, here they're asking us to find an equation of a line using the point slope form. So we see the line, and what we have to do here is look for where along that line is going through a grid point. So this point here is 2, 3. And then seeing where the other point is, this is 4, 2. Now we could make a little triangle, or we could have used these two ordered pairs in the slope formula. But here, we can just pick it out from the graph. It's a negative 1 down this way for rise, and then 2 over for run. So our slope is a negative 1/2. Now, we can use this point or this point in the point slope form. And for number 6, it says finding equation of a line using a graph. All right, so again, where do we have it crossing? And I see one right there. Let me sketch this out for you. I would say right there is a point. And I think right there is a point. So we're going to go over this way and make our little right triangle. So this is 1, 2, 3 for the run, and it's positive slope. And then we're up 1, 2, 3, 4. So once you find the slope by making your little triangle, and then this point here is going to be 1, or we can use this one here, it's a little small. So this is a negative 1 here, going over 1, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 3, 4, 5. We have the slope and 1 point just by looking at the graph and picking out, and of course there's an infinite number of points. Now if this were on the grid mark right here, the y-intercept, that would be very helpful, but it's not. So this is how you would start. And then using this, There are some points they're giving. And again, we said it was 4 over 3. And then you could use either of the points in the point-slope form. So we're getting a lot of practice here. And then that is what the equation would look like. Wow. And there it is in standard form. And there are some practice questions. Again, we'll pass this up unless you want to pause. Write any of these down. There's some practice. I guess that was a summary. And then these are the questions, because we're running 26 minutes.